Hello, Little Hunter by It's_Kingston on AO3. Summary. A midnight encounter that might just lead to more. I'm annoyed with the lack of finished Togachako stories, so I'll have a one-shot while my slow burn is in process. Episode 1. Chapter 1. The first meeting was coincidence. Uraraka Ochako was dressed in her guild-required uniform of a high school collared long sleeve and appropriate padded black shirt, with the thick black trousers to match. Black combat boots and the thin gloves of a similar color completed the uniform. She wasn't quite fond of it. Actually, she often made a point to inform all the higher-ups that wearing the same thing made them all easy to spot. It was like picking a businessman out of the circus lineup. She checked her belt again. A habit drill into her from a young age. A solid silver knife was strapped in her sheath, buckled firmly in her belt. Beside it, a wooden stake was resting in the leather loop. The digital watch around her, the outside of her sleeve displayed the time in a green glow, 4:21 a.m. Toga Himita watched silently from several meters away. A registered guild member, surely. They always wore such a bland clothing. She shook her head disapprovingly. The others would close in now, take out the hunter while she's busy adjusting her gear. After all, it was dangerous to let a young guard down in the neck of the woods. Toga would wait, though. She enjoyed watching them first, letting their movements and habits. She'd be patient. If she was caught, she could easily get out of it. Magic was rather helpful when dealing with the hunters. Ochako yawned and kept walking. She was deep in the woods, searching for any sign of non-human life. She hadn't found anything yet, but was almost certain something was lurking around. She guessed it already knew that she was here, and would strike soon. Toga followed behind her, climbing up the tree to continue moving around the human's head. She was quite the acrobat, and spent her free time running and jumping around the vast forest. She grinned wildly. She knew this forest far better than any hunter could dream to, as if she didn't already have enough of an advantage over the hunter, a young girl, judging by her heartbeat and breathing. Toga was nocturnal. The hunter was probably sleep-deprived, only running on naps during the day. The hunter squinted, trying to get her bearings as clouds overlapped the moon, plunging the forest into darkness. Toga was starting to get bored with her, and descended from the trees with a swift leap. She landed on her feet, and the hunger spun around from the sudden noise. She could hardly make out the figure in front of her, and her hands fumbled on her knife on relax. A hand caught her by the wrist, yanking it away from her belt. She was pushed against a tree, a few feet behind her, struggling to get free. Ochako lifted a foot, kicking her attacker in the stomach. The moon came back out from the clouds, shielding light on the situation. Ochako grabbed her silver knife, gripping it tightly in her right hand. The left one was balled into a fist as she got ready to fight. The person, or rather creature, that had kicked her had slid back a few inches before jumping backwards further to avoid conflict with the hunter's knife. "Well, hello, little hunter. What are you doing here?" the blonde asked, feeling curiosity. She giggled and cracked a smile. Dangerously sharp fangs, hardly visible from the current distance, though Ochako wasn't in a hurry to see them closer. She had her confirmation when the vampire called her a hunter, and when the moon lit the sky back up, her red eyes shone brightly. "Make this easy for both of us," Ochako said blankly. It was best not to antagonize the situation, nor was it good to let them know how she was feeling. She put a finger to her chin, thinking it over for a moment. "Nope." She popped the pea and smiled. This one, like the rest, was insane, and incredibly psychopathic, Ochako judged. "You didn't answer my question." It would remain that way, with them sitting in silence, watching the other. Ochako guessed that she could wait until the moonlight faded or was blocked again to attack. Another moment passed, and the blonde spoke. "It's a shame that you're boring. You're really pretty, too." Toga shook her head lightly before pushing forward. Ochako wasn't expecting this, and it took a moment to register what had happened. By the time she moved her arm to block an attack, she was already pinned with her back against a tree. Why? She wasn't sure. This was incredibly strange. Her arms were held above her head, far away from her tool belt. Not again, you don't, she said in a sing-song manner. Toga stepped forward, rather than necessary, so that they were toe-and-toe and chest-to-chest. Ochako thought it would be rather awkward, but found herself worrying more about the predicament. Now you can't kick me. Toga seemed satisfied with her work. She looked back up at the hunter. Their foreheads would have been touching, if not for the height difference. She smiled, and Ochako received the third piece of information to confirm this was, in fact, a vampire. 2 curved fangs, that had to be at least the width of her thumb, were in place of her canine teeth. They were small for one of her kind, which suggested she was still growing. That, or she was just a tiny one. In fact, Ochako had a bit of height on her, maybe 2 or 3 inches. The hunter leaned back against a tree, then pushed forward, trying to create enough momentum to topple over the blonde. Instead, there was only a giggle. You thought that would work? I thought you know that I'm much stronger than you. Toga pushed her firmly against the tree. Now, how do I... She trailed off, glaring the thick, covered jacket the hunter wore. Ochako's mind spun with ideas, trying to formulate a plan. Oh, duh! Toga would have facepalmed if she had not been holding the hunter in place. Hey, little hunter! She cooed, and Ochako flicked her gaze towards the attacker. Why don't I let you go? In exchange... Toga began, and Ochako watched as bright specks of pink began swirling around her red irises. Ochako almost gasped out loud, but instead closed her eyes and turning her head away. Aw, you know! No fun! Toga grumbled. She leaned closer. Come on. You know you want to look at me. I'm adorable. She giggled out. Although Ochako didn't budge, she had to admit the vampire told the truth. She was rather cute, but she wouldn't fall for it. She'd seen the others fall prey to their magic, their hypnotic suggestion, and paid the price with their lives. No, she said firmly. It was the second time she'd spoken since they first started the battle amongst 10 minutes ago. Oh, you do like talking to me. Toga smiled again. Ochako could hear it. The hunter didn't say anything in return. Simply holding the bulky jacket would deter the attack. There weren't anything she could do to begin with, unless she wanted to attempt negotiating with her current capture. Why don't we both go our separate ways, so we both end up alive? Ochako said. She opened her eyes, but didn't risk turning back towards Toga. Now that she knew that the latter's magic, it wouldn't risk worth talking. Why would I pass up on an already caught pretty little hunter? Toga asked. She shifted her hands, holding Ochako still with only one, while the other fumbled over the jacket's zipper. As soon as she grabbed it, she yanked back, hissing in pain. Settling a glare against Ochako, she spoke. Silver slippers? Really? How many times does this happen? You'll be surprised. Ochako said under her breath. While nothing else seemed to work, so maybe Toga would get bored and leave. It was really her only option right now. The vampire laughed lightly, probably at Ochako's murmuring. Really? I thought I was original. She seemed almost disappointed by that. No, you've had your fun. Let me go. Ochako said sternly, trying to push against her. Toga looked up towards the sky, taking note of the sunrise. I'll find you some other time, little hunter. I need to go now. She was gone before Ochako could react. If she really tried hard enough, the hunter could probably follow the rustling bushes and cracking of branches all the way back to Toga's hideout. Though she wasn't quite feeling up to the task. Instead, she slumped down to a sitting position at the base of the tree. It was around 6 in the morning, and she hadn't slept since the night before. Shaking her head, Ochako stood up and began the walk back to her house. Their second enchanter was one of chance. Damn it. Ochako raised her right hand to her left shoulder. She had been slashed by the claws of a werewolf, though it was a juvenile and didn't strike hard enough to make it lethal. She ducked behind a fallen log and examined the cuts. Ochako had been able to move, mostly out of the way, only getting scratched by the tip of the 3 nails, as opposite to the devastating blow of all 5. The bleeding wouldn't stop for a while, so she began trying to tear it off with some medical supplies. She packed up in advance. Halfway through, the beast grabbed the log she used as cover and sent it spinning across the night sky. The moon was full, as expected, and the fog appeared to almost split for a moment. Ochako rolled out of the way, landing on her right shoulder as she did, before climbing up to her knees. A glance behind her told her everything she needed to know. The werewolf was poised to attack, claws extended, and ready, teeth barred and sharp. Its brown fur was matted with something, maybe sap, or its own blood. Ochako had landed several good strikes with a silver knife, though none had pierced its heart. The monster lunged quickly, and it was all Ochako could do to jump out of the way. She landed poorly on her wounded shoulder and grimaced. The creature advanced towards her, yet she had trouble getting up. Her entire arm was busted, really bad, and there was a low chance she'd fractured something. Meanwhile, a shadow had lurched around the edges, and of the clearing of the battle that took place. Toka had heard the commotion miles away, not hard when there was a log thrown vacant, and was drawn to it. The smell of blood was thick in the air, as both parties were injured. The night was young, not even midnight yet, and the battle seemed as if it would end soon. A hunter lay almost completely motionless, and the werewolf crept forward, eyeing its prey. Toga paused, looking at the hunter with interest. Had that been the one that she'd been gone up against? They certainly looked the same, so Toga concluded they were. A liking killing the hunter would wanted to see her again. That wouldn't stand, so Toga raced forward, stopping in front of the hunter. "Knock it off. This one's mine," she said, waving away the werewolf. The beast growled, baring its teeth. It stood about 7 feet tall and casting a long shadow against the pair. "Hey, you stupid? I said leave," Toga growled. The Lycan, apparently not looking for a fight twice for a dinner, disappeared into the woods. It fired back a glance at Toga once more before trampling into the trees. Toga glanced at the hunter, who might have been teetering on the edge of consciousness as she lay there, with a dazed groan, probably from the shock of her body, and that had taken the bad landing. She pushed herself to a sitting position. Damn it. She didn't seem bothered by Toga's presence, and an uncharacteristic twist. Rather, she directed all her focus to the gash torn in her shoulder, bound to scar. The 3 claw marks that tore her flesh were clotting up, halting the flow of blood. Toga crouched down beside Togachako, examining the cut. It won't kill you. It's practically done bleeding," she said, looking back towards the hunter's face. Ochako, who was too busy checking the damage to notice the familiar voice, practically snapped her neck, looking up from her shoulder to Toga. Her hand raced to her belt on reflex alone, but didn't find purchase in her trusty knife. It sat, glaring under the moonlight several feet away, knocked from her hand around the time where the werewolf threw the log. Toga caught onto the act instantly and grabbed the hunter's wrist. She was strangely careful not to further worsen the wound on Ochako's shoulder. There was no tree to pin, or be pinned, up against nearby, as the pair sat in the dirt of an old clearing. Maybe it was used for something years ago, but now it only remained empty and lost in time. Funny how many things people pass up in their lives, how many undiscovered and lost treasures dot the world awaiting to be noticed. "If I wanted to kill you, I would have done it already." Toga narrowed her eyes, holding the hunter's wrist tightly. "I saved your life, little hunter." She watched Ochako process the information, coming up with a rebuttal, taking this time to observe the hunter as she'd done during their first meeting. Toga silently watched. There was something breathtaking about her, the way she fought. "Let me go, and stop calling me that." Ochako yanked her right arm again, trying to pull free. It was useless motion. She knew this. The vampire most definitely had the upper hand when it came to raw strength. Ochako, nearly as calm as she would have been, ran on an absurd amount of pure adrenaline. Toga noticed this, and took advantage of the rationality. "Ah, does it bother you?" Toga mocked, grinning. Ochako yanked away, glaring, but stopped unexpectedly as she cried out in pain. She reopened the wound in her shoulder, and the blood trickling down her sleeve once more. Do I even need to do anything? Toga raised an eyebrow. She quite literally hadn't done anything, and the hunter was already out of commission. This wasn't very fun. She let go of Ochako and walked over to the hunter's knife, pulling it as hard as she could. The knife flew far into the woods, landing somewhere amongst the shrubble. There. Toga turned back to Ochako. I'll walk you home, so that way you don't die, and we could fight again later. No, Ochako said sternly. She moved slowly and watched Toga as she got up. Dirt, mud, cobwebs, and a variety of other things that she'd run through coated her uniform. And as badly as she wanted to patch up her shoulder and take a shower, she was not about to accept help from the vampire that was trying to kill her moments ago. Why not? Toga asked innocently. She expected the hunter's uniform from afar. Not like you're going anywhere in that. I refuse to let you escort me, Ochako replied, starting to walk away. She walked backwards, keeping Toga in her sight as she navigated around the trees. I'll just follow you then. I've got Toga looked up at the moon. Ochako noticed the way it reflected off her eyes and lit up her face. 5 or 7 hours until the sun comes up? Unless you plan on hanging out in the woods until then. Ochako kept walking, not taking her eyes off of Toga, who followed behind her. You're gonna get killed walking backwards. And you're gonna kill me if I walk forwards. Ochako snapped back. A lack of sleep, combined with an injury, and a really odd creature following her wasn't doing anything good for her mood. Walking backwards doesn't change how easy it'll be to kill you. I kicked your knife away. What are you even gonna do? Try and stake me? Toga laughed. It was common knowledge that staking a vampire without first weakening one with a silver would almost always end with the death of a hunter. I'm walking you home now, but if you pull anything, I'll kill you. It unnerved Ochako, the way she'd said that while smiling. It was an uneventful and mostly backwards walk home. Ochako had given up the remote motion after almost falling down a steep hill, something Toga warned her about at the absolute last second. She didn't hide the way she checked behind her every few minutes, watching Toga. The latter didn't seem to care and enjoyed ducking behind trees when she thought the hunter wouldn't look, something that caused Ochako great distress every time she lost track of her. Oh, come on! I'm not even that scary, Toga had said after the first incident of this. I know you know that. Your opinions contradict your behavior, Ochako said back, moving further to the side when Toga began walking beside her. You're saying me walking you home and protecting you from the dangers of this forest is scary? You are the dangers of this forest. And yes, it's nerve-wracking. Toga didn't miss the way Ochako's hand would rest on the wooden stake, snapped to her belt, or the way she jolted whenever Toga gestured to something. It was 12:19 in the morning when Ochako stopped at the end of her driveway. She was shocked that Toga had dared to enter the golden-protected town, even more so how she did so without hesitation. You're insane, Ochako said, retreating to her house. She slammed the door and locked it, despite the fact that Toga couldn't come in, even if she wanted to. First, Ochako would have to invite her inside. The hunter drew the curtains and flipped the light switch. Her house was illuminated brightly and shone through the closed curtains. Toga watched from outside. She knew that the hunter wouldn't dare to, but she hoped Ochako would allow her in. She stood there for the longer than she expected herself to, occasionally seeing the shadow of the hunter flicker across the curtains as she walked through her house. Bye! This is low-key giving at odds and ends, which, by the way, I also got confirmation that I could revamp that one, and that one's the one that I'm most excited about. I think for that one, I'm definitely gonna cast Hisashi as Sunny. Only because I want to play Hisashi. No, not I want to play Hisashi, but I want to be Aizawa, and Sunny could be Hisashi. Obviously, for those, we're gonna cut the certain scenes. We'll just do the subnosis. Is that how it's pronounced? Subnosis? Anyways, but this is what that reminds me of. I am... Okay, look. I hate Twilight, but I am a sucker for Hunter X Vampire. Or Human X Vampire. Like, I'm a sucker for that shit. Like, that shit, I eat it up every day. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? I think I've talked to this about with Sunny, but I find a human ex-vampire so romantic in the sense of I would love to date a vampire and give them my blood. Give them my blood to know that they are alive and well because I am actively providing something for them. I'm romantic like that, yeah. And I find that so romantic and so endearing, and it's like, oh, I love it so much. It reminds me of pomegranates, you know? I love that so much, and I love that type of trope, and I would love to do that type of trope. In fact, I might write a vampire story one day. I don't know. Just it all depends on how I feel and stuff, you know? Vampires and stuff. I don't know. Maybe I'll do a Vampire X Omegaverse. How would that work? Would betas be normal humans, omegas be blood bags, and alphas be vampires? Has somebody done that before? Anyways, but this was super cute, Kingston. I really enjoyed this. This was super fun. There's still more. I'm not saying that it's done. This chapter's not even done. I still have half the chapter to be completed, and I'm gonna do half the chapter. But it's really cute. I really enjoyed this. As I said, it's a little different than at Odds and Ends, obviously, because at Odds and Ends, the vampires were like living regularly and not in the forest. I wonder, is the League of Villains going to show an appearance? Like, Shigaraki. I think Shigaraki would be a vampire. I don't know if Dabi would be a vampire. Okay, what if Dabi's like a regular human? Who just lives in the woods with a bunch of creatures of the night? Like, he actively chooses to do that. Like, he's not like some creature of the night. He just actively chooses to be there. Or it could be like, if vampires are not like, you're born a vampire, you're turned a vampire, then Dabi could be turned a vampire. But otherwise, I think the idea of like a group of just a bunch of different wood night creatures, and then the one human. Like the human who wants to kill other humans out of pure fucking spite. Just like, hey yo, I'll lure them into a false sense of security, y'all kill them, and then, I don't know, I'll go hunt for berries or something. You know, or like, there'll be like, okay, look, you get us humans, we'll get you deer. Kind of situation, you know, like, you lure them in, you're the bait, and boom, beautiful. And like, Dabi does it just to spite his father. I don't know. Sorry, I'm just thinking. But I do like this type of situation. I wonder how it's gonna turn romantic, though. Like, how is that gonna go? I do like the title, like, Hello, Little Hunter. Ah, I love that. I love that. I'm so intrigued. I want to know how your vampires work, Kingston. So I'm guessing they're allergic to the sun, right? Because there's different types of vampires and stuff like that. Like, for example, I have an OC, Rena. She has a vampire quirk, right? And depending on where she is how overpowered that shit is, because in the role-playing server I'm in, it is overpowered as fuck. And I mean overpowered as fuck. I mean, whoever blood she drinks, depending on how much blood she drank, is how much of that person's quirk she could use, right? So think a mixture of Toga's quirk with Monema's quirk, right? And in some versions, she can even choose to take someone's quirk. Sometimes she could choose to take someone's quirk simply by drinking 2 liters of blood. And that does not mean straight from like the, what's it called? The body. It could be like slowly drawing that much blood and then drinking the 2 liters of blood and actively choosing to take away the person's quirk. Sometimes she just needs to drink the blood and then she chooses, do I want to keep the quirk permanently and steal the quirk from the other person, or just borrow the quirk, right? Copy the quirk instead of taking the quirk. And in some instances, right, she can have multiple quirks lined up at the ready for her use, right? And she could use multiple quirks at the same time. She's like Overhaul, basically. Not Overhaul, my bad. She's like, All for One. But less evil. See, she's super overpowered, right? Apart from that, when she drinks her own blood, she gets into this frenzy where, like, she's super fucking strong. Like, think super strong fucking vampire shit. What else does she have? Oh, her blood. Inherently, her blood is, it paralyzes people on touch. It is Actually, I have that for angst. I know I have a plot point that I really want to do in the future. Where in that one, her quirk isn't that. Her quirk is she's an empathetic vampire, so she can feel other people's emotions. And in fact, when she drinks people's blood, she could tell what the person is feeling at that moment. And she just needs blood to survive. So she's a little bit stronger than normal people. She needs blood to survive. The more blood she drinks, the stronger she gets. Type of situation. Kind of like Sato's sugar thing, the sugar high, but with blood. And she's also an empath, so she could feel what other people feel. She could see what other people see, not sees what other people feel, but feels what other people feels, or knows what other people are feeling, kind of situation. And in there, her blood is still, paralyzer. So if she has a cut wound, even if you have clothes on top of it, it absorbs super fast. Her blood is super absorbent, in the sense of it goes through really quickly. And so medical people, when working on her, need to be super fucking fast, because at one point, and need to be super fucking careful, because if they do not have latex gloves on, it will get to their skin and it will paralyze them. And even if a small speck gets on their skin or on their clothes, they need to wear fully, have to be fully aware of everything that's happening with the blood, or else they will get paralyzed. And it comes to a breaking point on angst, because at one point I think I'm gonna have her get ambushed, because she's a police officer, and she's really badly injured, stab wound in the stomach, and she can't get saved because she forcefully she can only accept her own blood, because her blood is vastly different from everybody. She's her own blood type, so she has to rely on the very little blood that she has donated for herself. Not to mention, she needs to make sure that the people who are treating her are being absolutely fucking careful, and every time they're not, they get paralyzed. It is a whole hassle, and it is so much. But as I said, I wonder how your vampires work, because every vampire is different, right? We have the Twilight shimmering vampires, the Yassified vampires. We have, obviously, this one, I'm guessing they can't be in the sun, right? Do they need blood to survive? Or can they go off of, human blood to survive? Or is it, you don't need human blood, you could do other blood? Do they need live blood? Or can it be preserved blood? Do they absolutely need blood? Or is it a want? Can they survive off of other things? Does it have to be human blood? How much blood do they need on a regular basis? Stuff like that I wonder. Obviously, we have the same rules that apply, you can't go in unless you're invited, which is something that I very much do with Rena. I have a whole funny bit where she's just standing there at the door and people are looking at her. She's like, you need to let me in. I can't go in. I'm not allowed in. You have to let me in. It's not that I don't want to go in. It's I physically can't go in. I physically can't tell my body to go in. You need to tell me. I can't. There's a barrier. I can't. You gotta tell me, dude. I need you to let me in, right? So clearly you have that. I wonder, is Toga allergic to, what's it called? Garlic. I'm so sad if she is. Garlic bread is the bomb. But is she allergic to garlic? What are the other implications? Are we gonna learn about this in the future? Because if we are, just don't tell me. Anyways, I think that's all. I think this is really good writing. I am really enjoying it so far. I kind of went on a tangent. But as always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.